My cousin sabotaged my life twice, first by framing me for theft, then by hacking my work and blackmailing me. So I went public, got her jailed, and never spoke to her again. When I was 16, I got banned from my aunt's house for stealing my cousin's diamond necklace. Except I didn't steal anything. My cousin Marla planted it in my suitcase, then found it during dinner like she was auditioning for Pretty Little Liars. I knew it was fake. So did my mom. But all she whispered was, "Don't escalate." So I didn't. I let the lie stick. And I spent the rest of high school being that girl who stole from her own family. So I moved away, built a new life, and never looked back. I'm 28 now, with a stable career in tech and a leadership role I worked my butt off to earn. People know me as kind, fair, and unproblematic. So when Marla DM'd me out of nowhere saying, "Let's grab coffee, I miss you," my first thought was, absolutely not. But then I remembered something my therapist said once. Closure isn't always for them. Sometimes it's you deciding you're not afraid anymore. So I said yes. Marla showed up overdressed and underqualified. We did the fake cousin hug, then she launched into her redemption arc. I've done a lot of healing. I was going through a dark time back then, but therapy's been huge. Then she hit me with the real reason she came. "I saw your company's hiring. You have no idea how much I'd love a shot." I kept it diplomatic. Said, "I'll pass your resume to HR." But inside, I was screaming, no. 2 weeks later, my boss pulled me aside during lunch. "Hey, I didn't know that Marla applicant was your cousin. She crushed her interview with Tony's team and started today." I nearly dropped my fork. She got hired. On another team. Using my name. Without my knowledge. I wanted to walk straight into HR and explode. But instead, I took a breath. Because if there's one thing I learned from Marla, it's that the best manipulation is subtle. At first, she was on her best behavior. Fake polite, performatively helpful. But I started noticing weird things. Slack messages that I never sent. Calendar invites created under my name. Then I got a warning from IT. "You left sensitive salary data exposed for an entire department. That's a breach." Of course, I hadn't done that. So I did a tiny bit of digging and found that Marla had used one of my unlocked terminals after a team meeting. She was logged in under my name. Yet still, I didn't report her. Because part of me still clung to this idea that if I didn't overreact, I wouldn't become the problem. So I confronted her in private. "I know what you did." She just smiled. "You left it open. Honest mistake. We're family, you're not really gonna write me up over a tab, are you?" That's when I knew she felt safe. Safe enough to push. The next week, someone sent a screenshot to HR from a burner Twitter account. It was a tweet thread accusing me of being a toxic female manager who weaponizes diversity to bully other women. It referenced exact projects I led, and exact phrases I'd used during meetings. It was personal, and just vague enough to look real. HR opened a quiet investigation. My boss started CCing leadership on every message to me. My work best friend asked me, "Is there something you're not telling me?" I was spiraling. And the worst part? Marla was still breezing into work every morning like nothing happened. That's when I knew this whole acting nice thing wasn't working. I had to stop being polite. I went straight to security. I pulled badge data, compiled Slack logs, Google Drive activity, even overlapping timestamps on the burner account. Then I set up a meeting with HR. I walked in and presented a color-coded timeline, then said, "You hired someone who once framed me for theft at 16. This isn't new behavior. It's a pattern." 2 days later, Marla was suspended pending internal review. She didn't show up for her shift, but she did post a new tweet from her burner. "Imagine destroying your own cousin's life over a job. Couldn't be me." HR hasn't cleared me publicly yet. Today, I walked into work and saw Marla's desk being packed up. Not by her, by someone from legal. But she's not done. Before I left for the day, I got a text from an unknown number. Just 3 words. "See you soon." I reported the text to HR, who said they'd document it but couldn't do much about a vague message that contained no explicit threat. I went home that night and double-checked all my locks, testing each window. I felt ridiculous being scared of my own cousin, but I also knew what she was capable of, the depths of her vindictiveness. The next morning, I woke up to an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was, "We should talk." The body was short. "I have some things that belong to you, and some things that don't. Coffee tomorrow? Same place as last time." I knew it was Marla. I also knew I shouldn't meet her alone, the risk too great. I forwarded the email to HR and my boss, then called my friend Mike, who works as a security consultant. He agreed to sit at a nearby table during the meeting, close enough to intervene if needed, but far enough to not be obvious. I arrived at the coffee shop early, the smell of espresso doing nothing to calm my nerves, with Mike already positioned at a table with a clear view. Marla showed up right on time, looking surprisingly put together for someone who'd just been fired, her hair perfectly styled and her makeup flawless. She sat down across from me with a large envelope, placing it on the table between us like a barrier. "You won," she said, sliding the envelope toward me, her red nails scraping against the paper. "Congratulations." I didn't touch it, keeping my hands firmly in my lap. "What is this?" "Just some things I thought you might want back." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes, which remained cold and calculating. "Your private emails to your therapist about your anxiety. The complaint you filed against Jason from marketing last year for inappropriate comments. Your medical records showing your prescription history. Fascinating reading." My blood ran cold, a wave of nausea washing over me. Those were all confidential documents stored in my personal email or password-protected files. "How did you get those?" She shrugged, the gesture casual as if we were discussing the weather. "The keylogger was just the start. I've been monitoring your computer for weeks, ever since our coffee meeting. I installed remote access software during my first week at the company when I volunteered to help IT with those updates. Your work computer gave me access to your email, and I noticed you sometimes checked personal accounts there. Plus, I found your password manager. I have copies of everything, by the way. This is just a gesture of goodwill. What do you want, Marla? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. I want you to tell HR and everyone else that this was all a misunderstanding. That you overreacted. That I should get my job back. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Otherwise, these documents might find their way to some interesting people. Your boss might want to know you called him an emotionally stunted man-child in an email to your friend. The whole company might be interested in your complaints about the toxic culture. I felt sick, my stomach churning. She was blackmailing me with my own private thoughts. That's illegal. So is falsely accusing someone of corporate espionage. She sipped her coffee calmly, her lipstick leaving a perfect imprint on the cup. You have until Monday to fix this. Clear my name, I get my job back, and we both move on with our lives. I left that meeting shaking with anger, the cool air outside doing nothing to calm the heat rising in my cheeks. Mike followed me out and listened as I explained what happened, his face growing more concerned with each word. She's bluffing, he said, trying to reassure me. She can't actually release those documents without implicating herself in the theft. But she could anonymously leak them, I said, voicing my greatest fear. And the damage would be done before anyone could trace it back to her. I spent the weekend in a panic, pacing my apartment and jumping at every notification on my phone. I considered giving in to her demands. I even drafted an email to HR saying I might have overreacted, my finger hovering over the send button for a full minute. But something stopped me from sending it. I was tired of letting Marla win, tired of not escalating when I was being wronged. Instead, I called my therapist for an emergency session, her calm voice a lifeline in my storm of anxiety. I explained the situation, and she helped me see that I wasn't 16 anymore. I had options, I had power, I didn't have to be a victim. On Sunday night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Marla blackmail me, but I also wasn't going to just hope she was bluffing. I needed to find leverage of my own, something that would neutralize her threats. I remembered something odd from when I was building my case against her. When I was reviewing her employment application, I noticed she'd listed a previous job at a company called Vertex Solutions. But when I searched for her on LinkedIn during my investigation, that job wasn't on her profile. It seemed like a small discrepancy at the time, but now it felt significant, a loose thread I could pull. I spent hours searching online for any connection between Marla and Vertex Solutions, my eyes burning from staring at the screen. Nothing came up under her name. On a hunch, I tried searching for news about Vertex and data breaches or security incidents. Bingo. An article from 2 years ago mentioned a security breach at Vertex where an employee allegedly accessed confidential client information. The employee wasn't named, but the article mentioned they were terminated and the company implemented new security protocols afterward. I dug deeper, searching for any employees who left Vertex around that time. I found a LinkedIn profile for someone named Maria Lawrence, whose employment at Vertex ended the same month as the security incident. The profile had no photo, minimal information, and only that one job listed. It seemed fake, created just to have something to show on a resume. I compared the job description on Maria's profile to the one Marla had listed on her application. They were identical, word for word. Marla had worked at Vertex under a fake name, been involved in a security breach, and then created a new identity for her next job hunt. This was huge. If she'd used a false identity at her previous job, that alone could be grounds for termination from our company. If she was involved in a security breach there similar to what she'd done at our company, that was a pattern of behavior that went beyond our personal history. I needed more proof, though. I reached out to a contact at Vertex through a mutual connection, carefully explaining that I was investigating a potential security threat at my company. Without naming Marla, I asked if they could confirm if Maria Lawrence had worked there and the circumstances of her departure. My contact was understandably cautious but agreed to check with their HR department. The next morning, I received an email. HR confirms Maria Lawrence was terminated for policy violations related to data security. They're limited in what they can share, but suggested if this person is applying to your company, you should proceed with caution. I also found a photo from a Vertex company event on their Facebook page. In the background, partially obscured but still recognizable, was Marla. I saved the image and zoomed in, enhancing it as much as possible. It was definitely her, the same smile she used to charm our colleagues now frozen in digital evidence. Armed with this information, I drafted an email to our HR director, security team, and legal department. I explained Marla's blackmail attempt and the evidence I'd found about her false identity and previous security violations. I attached the photo, the LinkedIn profile screenshot, and the email from my Vertex contact. I believe Marla has engaged in a pattern of identity fraud and data theft across multiple companies, I wrote. I'm concerned not only for my own privacy, but for the security of our company's data. I'm also worried about potential legal liability if she uses information stolen from our systems to harm others. I sent the email Sunday night, then tried to get some sleep, tossing and turning as scenarios played out in my mind. Monday morning, I woke up to a flurry of responses. Our legal team wanted to meet immediately. Security was conducting an audit of all systems Marla had accessed. HR was contacting Vertex directly for more information. I went to work feeling nervous but resolute, my determination stronger than my fear. In the conference room, our legal director, security chief, and HR director were waiting. They looked serious, their expressions grim. First, the legal director said, "We want to apologize. You reported a security concern, we addressed it, but we didn't fully appreciate the scope of the threat Ms. Carson posed. The security chief nodded, his usually stoic face showing concern. Based on your new information, we've done a deeper investigation. We found evidence she accessed not just your personal files, but confidential company information including client data, financial projections, and product roadmaps. We've also confirmed with Vertex that she worked there under a false name and was terminated for similar behavior, the HR director added. They're considering legal action now that we've brought this to their attention? What about her threats to release my personal information? I asked, the question that had been keeping me awake. We're sending her a cease and desist letter today, the legal director said, her voice firm. It makes clear that any distribution of materials obtained through unauthorized access to company systems would result in immediate legal action. We're also reporting this to the police as a potential case of corporate espionage. I felt a weight lifting, the first real relief I'd felt in weeks. They were taking this seriously. They were protecting me. There's one more thing, the security chief said, looking down at his notes. We found evidence she's been applying to other tech companies in the area using your name as a reference. We're reaching out to our contacts at those companies to warn them. I left that meeting feeling vindicated but exhausted, the adrenaline that had been sustaining me finally crashing. The whole ordeal had taken a toll on me. I took the rest of the day off and went home to decompress, falling into a deep sleep for the first time in days. That evening, I received another text from the unknown number. You're going to regret this. I forwarded it to our legal team and blocked the number, refusing to let her threats control me anymore. The next day, I arrived at work to find a small group of people waiting at my desk. Derek was there, along with Tanya from HR and several of my teammates, including Jasmine. We owe you an apology, Derek said, his voice sincere. We should have trusted you from the beginning. Jasmine stepped forward, her eyes downcast. I'm sorry I doubted you. When that Twitter stuff came out, I should have known it wasn't you. I've worked with you for 2 years. I know your character. One by one, they expressed their support. It was awkward but also healing, like lancing a wound. They had believed the worst about me, but now they were trying to make it right. HR sent a carefully worded email to the entire company explaining that a former employee had engaged in unauthorized system access and identity misrepresentation. Without naming names, it made clear that any rumors stemming from this individual should be disregarded. It also announced new security protocols to prevent similar incidents in the future. I felt like I could finally breathe again. Marla was gone. My reputation was being restored. The company was taking steps to protect me and our data. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Marla had shown herself to be vindictive and patient. She'd waited 12 years to get revenge for me standing up to her about the necklace. What would she do now that I'd gotten her fired from 2 jobs? A week later, I got my answer. I was working late when an email notification popped up. It was from an unfamiliar address, but the subject line made my heart race. Data breach at my company. What the public deserves to know. The email contained dozens of screenshots of confidential company information, the files Marla had accessed before she was caught. Customer data, product plans, financial information. At the bottom was a note. Publishing tomorrow unless you contact me to negotiate. She was escalating from blackmailing me to blackmailing the entire company. And she was using me as the contact point, making it look like I was somehow involved. I immediately called our security team's emergency number. Within an hour, an incident response team had assembled in our office. They traced the email to a public Wi-Fi network at a library across town. They were taking it seriously, but we all knew the damage that could be done if this information got out. We need to find her, I said, my resolve hardening. She's not going to stop. I didn't sleep at all that night. The security team worked through the night trying to trace Marla's movements. They set up some kind of monitoring system on the email address she used, hoping she'd check it again and reveal her location. I just paced around the office, drinking way too much coffee and feeling like I was going to throw up. Around 5 a.m., I crashed on the couch in the break room for maybe an hour before jerking awake to the sound of people arriving. Our CEO had been notified and called an emergency leadership meeting. I sat there with bags under my eyes while executives in pressed suits debated whether to contact the police, pay her off, or try to catch her themselves. We can't negotiate with her, I said, my voice sounding rough from exhaustion. She'll just keep coming back for more. The CEO, a woman in her 50s who'd built the company from nothing, looked at me with sharp eyes. You know her better than anyone here. What do you think she really wants? That question hit me hard. What did Marla actually want? Money? Revenge? To hurt me specifically? I thought about our history, about the necklace incident, about everything that had happened since. She wants power, I finally said. She wants to feel like she's in control, and she wants to win. The security director, a former FBI guy named Marcus, nodded slowly. Then we need to make her think she's winning while we track her down. We came up with a plan. I would respond to her email, pretending to negotiate. We'd try to get her to agree to a meeting where we could identify her. Meanwhile, our legal team was preparing to file for a restraining order and criminal charges. I sent a carefully worded email. What do you want? The company is willing to discuss terms. Short, desperate sounding, like I was panicking, which wasn't far from the truth. She responded within minutes. Smart choice. $250,000 in cryptocurrency. Instructions to follow. We kept the exchange going, with the security team coaching me on what to say. We managed to get her to agree to a video call to prove she really had the data. Marcus said this was our chance to get evidence of her making the threat directly. The call was set for noon. I sat in a conference room surrounded by our security team and two actual FBI agents who specialized in cybercrime. They had recording equipment set up and were tracking the call. When Marla's face appeared on screen, I almost didn't recognize her. She'd dyed her hair black and was wearing glasses. She looked tired but smug. "Hello, cousin," she said, smirking. "Bet you never thought we'd end up here." I stuck to the script the FBI guys had given me. "I just want to know why. Why are you doing this?" She laughed, a harsh sound that made me flinch. "Why? Because you've always had everything handed to you. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life. Meanwhile, I've had to fight for every scrap. And now you've ruined my career." "You ruined your own career by breaking the law," I said, forgetting the script for a moment. Her eyes narrowed. "Always so self-righteous. Just like when we were kids. You thought you were better than me then too." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I just want this to end, Marla. What will it take?" "I told you. $250,000. And a signed statement from you admitting you falsely accused me. I want my reputation back." One of the FBI agents nodded at me, signaling they had what they needed. I kept her talking for another few minutes while they traced the call. After we hung up, the agent turned to me. "We got her location. She's at a motel about 20 miles from here. Local police are on their way now." I collapsed into a chair, the adrenaline that had been keeping me going suddenly draining away. It was almost over. But Marla had one more card to play. While the FBI was tracking her down, she sent the data to 3 major tech blogs with a note claiming to be a whistleblower exposing corporate misconduct. She specifically named me as the source of the leak. One of the blogs published portions of it before our legal team could intervene. My phone started blowing up with notifications. Colleagues asking if I'd really leaked company data. Industry contacts wondering what the hell was going on. My mom calling in a panic after seeing my name in an article. I was sitting in the conference room trying to explain to my mom that no, I wasn't going to jail, when Marcus burst in. "They got her," he said, his face breaking into a rare smile. "She's in custody, and they found all the evidence on her laptop. The original files, the emails, everything." I should have felt relieved, but I just felt empty. The damage was already spreading online. My name was being dragged through the mud. Again. Our PR team went into overdrive, issuing statements clarifying that I was the victim, not the perpetrator. The CEO personally called the editors of the blogs that had published the data, threatening legal action if they didn't issue corrections immediately. By evening, most of the stories had been updated or taken down. The company issued a public statement about the data breach, explaining it was the work of a disgruntled former employee who was now in police custody. They didn't name Marla, but they specifically stated that I had helped identify and stop the breach. I went home around 8 p.m., completely drained. I took the longest shower of my life, standing under the hot water until it ran cold, trying to wash away the stress of the past few weeks. When I finally checked my phone, I had a voicemail from an unknown number. It was my Aunt Karen, Marla's mom. Her voice sounded small and tired. "I just heard what happened. The police called us. I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. For everything. For not believing you back then. Marla needs help. She's needed help for a long time and we didn't see it. Or didn't want to see it. Please call me back when you can." I didn't call her back that night. I wasn't ready to deal with more family drama. Instead, I took 2 sleeping pills and passed out for 12 hours straight. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Derek saying to take as much time off as I needed. The company was covering therapy sessions for me and had hired a reputation management firm to help clean up any lingering issues online. I spent the next week mostly in my apartment, venturing out only for coffee and groceries. I binge-watched mindless TV shows and ignored most calls. I needed time to process everything. Eventually, I did call my aunt back. It was an awkward conversation full of long pauses and half-finished sentences. She told me Marla had been struggling with mental health issues for years but refused treatment. She'd been fired from 6 jobs in the past 4 years, not just the 2 I knew about. Each time she blamed someone else for sabotaging her. "I should have seen the pattern," Aunt Karen said, her voice cracking. "After what happened with the necklace, I should have questioned it more." I didn't say much. What was there to say? That one lie had spiraled into years of deception and manipulation, and it had affected so many people beyond just me and Marla. 2 weeks after Marla's arrest, I went back to work. People were awkward around me at first, not sure whether to mention what happened or pretend everything was normal. I appreciated the ones who just said, "That sucked, glad you're okay," and moved on. My boss called me into his office my first day back. I thought he wanted to check in, but he had actual work news. "The executive team was impressed with how you handled the situation," Derek said. "They're creating a new role in the security department focused on insider threats and want you to consider taking it. It would be a promotion." I was stunned. "They want to promote me because my cousin tried to destroy the company?" Derek laughed. "No, they want to promote you because you showed exceptional judgment under pressure, helped identify a serious security threat, and protected company assets. The fact that it was your cousin just makes it more impressive that you didn't let personal relationships cloud your judgment." I took a few days to think about it, then accepted the position. It felt right, using this horrible experience to help prevent similar situations in the future. About a month later, I got a letter from Marla. It had been screened by the police first, since she wasn't supposed to contact me directly. It wasn't an apology. It was a rambling 4-page explanation of how everything was still my fault, how I'd always been the favorite, how I'd ruined her life by reporting her. I read it once, then shredded it. I didn't need her version of events anymore. I knew the truth. Marla eventually took a plea deal. She was sentenced to 18 months for corporate espionage and cyberstalking, plus 5 years probation. She's also banned from working in tech or finance, which I guess limits her ability to pull this stunt again. I still think about her sometimes, especially when I'm implementing new security protocols at work. In a weird way, she made me better at my job. I understand the mindset of someone who feels entitled to information they shouldn't have, who justifies theft and sabotage as somehow deserved. My mom asked me recently if I've forgiven Marla. I told her I haven't, not really. But I'm not angry anymore either. Mostly I just feel sad about all the wasted energy, all the years spent on this pointless rivalry that only existed in Marla's mind. Last week, I got a notification that someone had tried to view my LinkedIn profile using a computer at the correctional facility where Marla is serving her sentence. I could have blocked her, but I didn't. Let her see my new job title, my promotions, my recommendations from colleagues. Let her see what I've built while she's been trying to tear things down. I also finally sent an email to my therapist, the one I'd been putting off writing. I told her she was right about closure. It wasn't about Marla at all. It was about me deciding I wasn't afraid anymore. I'm not afraid of confrontation now. I'm not afraid to escalate when something is wrong. And I'm definitely not afraid of Marla anymore. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stood up to her when we were 16. If I'd refused to let that lie stand. Maybe things would have been different. Or maybe she would have found another way to target me. I'll never know. What I do know is that the scared 16-year-old who let someone else control the narrative is gone. In her place is someone who fought back and won. Someone who didn't let the past define her future. The company eventually recovered from the data breach. We lost a few clients, but our transparency about what happened actually impressed others. We implemented new security measures that I helped design, and I now lead quarterly trainings on identifying insider threats. I had dinner with my mom last night. She asked if I was still checking my locks twice before bed. I was. And if I'd considered moving to a new apartment. I had. Then she said something that stuck with me. You know, when I told you not to escalate that day at your aunt's house, I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong. I should have taught you to stand up for yourself even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I told her it was okay, that I'd figured it out eventually. Better late than never, right? So that's where things stand now. Marla's in prison. I'm thriving at work. My family relationships are complicated but healing. And I finally understand what my therapist meant about closure. It wasn't about confronting Marla or getting an apology I knew would never come. It was about closing the chapter myself, on my own terms. I still lock my computer when I go to the bathroom, though. Some habits are worth keeping.